Judge Prescott thought he could silence an American political figure, Mrs. Karoline Leavitt, with a fine. He never expected her to dismantle his entire argument in front of everyone in the courthouse. The story begins with the sun cast long shadows over the courthouse. Lawyers, clerks, and journalists bustled through the grand wooden doors, their voices merging into an indistinct hum. A crisp autumn wind swept through the plaza, rustling the flags that stood outside, symbols of justice, freedom, and the Constitution. Inside, the courtroom held its own kind of stillness. The scent of polished wood and aged paper lingered in the air. The heavy oak benches, the towering judge's bench, the American flag hanging proudly behind it. It was a place where laws were upheld, where justice was supposed to be blind. But today, justice was about to be tested. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history and a fierce defender of constitutional rights, strode into the courtroom. She carried herself with the air of someone who had faced tougher battles than this, who had debated policy on national television, stood by a president's side in the most heated of moments, and endured public scrutiny with unwavering resolve. This hearing was meant to be a routine matter, just another legal proceeding in a long career. But something in the air felt different, heavy, charged, and as she adjusted the lapel of her blazer, she could feel the weight of eyes on her. One set of eyes, in particular, was burning into her. Judge Prescott, known for his rigid courtroom policies, cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Miss Leavitt, I must remind you that religious symbols have no place in my courtroom." A murmur rippled through the spectators. Even the bailiff seemed to shift uncomfortably. Karoline barely blinked. She knew exactly where this was going. Around her neck, resting just below her collarbone, was a simple gold cross, one she had worn every day since she was a teenager, a symbol of faith, conviction, and the very principles upon which America was built. The judge's voice sliced through the hush like a gavel strike. "You are in violation of the neutrality of this space. You will need to remove it or face a fine." The tension thickened. The court clerk darted a nervous glance at the judge, then at Karoline. This wasn't just about a necklace. It was about something bigger, an unspoken challenge to the freedoms she had spent her entire career defending. Karoline remained perfectly still, her hands resting calmly on the table before her. Inside, she felt something colder, sharper, an edge of righteous indignation. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady but firm, "my cross is no different than a wedding ring or a locket with a family photo inside. It is a personal expression, not a political statement." Judge Prescott's face remained unreadable. "That's not how I see it." Karoline's eyes locked onto his. "Then let's discuss it formally," she said, folding her hands over her briefcase. "I'll be filing an objection." The judge smirked, glancing at the clock on the wall. "Miss Leavitt, this hearing is about a business dispute, not your personal grievances." Karoline met his gaze head-on. "The First Amendment doesn't take a recess for personal opinions, Your Honor." The courtroom's energy shifted. The air was thick with anticipation. A legal battle was unfolding, not over a contract, but over religious freedom itself. And a slow, deliberate silence settled over the room as Karoline reached into her briefcase. Every movement was calculated. Every pause, every breath tightened the suspense. She pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it carefully on the table. Then, raising her chin slightly, she spoke with the composure of someone who had prepared for this exact moment. "Your Honor, let's break this down legally," she said. "You claim my cross violates courtroom neutrality. What legal precedent are you basing that on?" The room was silent. Even the court reporter hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, as if unwilling to miss a single word. Judge Prescott exhaled, rubbing his temples. "This courtroom operates under my authority, Miss Leavitt." Karoline nodded. "It does, but that authority is not above the Constitution." She tapped the paper in front of her. "Under the First Amendment, personal religious expression is protected, especially when it does not disrupt proceedings." The judge scoffed. "You're an attorney, not a law professor." Karoline's smile was cool, unwavering. "Then let's talk case law." She held up the paper, her voice sharp and deliberate. "Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969. The Supreme Court ruled that individuals do not shed their constitutional rights when they enter a government institution. Prescott's jaw tightened. He knew the case, but Karoline wasn't finished. West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943, she continued. The Supreme Court ruled that compelling individuals to remove or hide symbols of personal belief is a violation of their First Amendment rights. She set the paper down, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the room. Would you like me to keep going, Your Honor? She said smoothly. Or would you prefer to reconsider that fine? Silence. The courtroom held its breath. The judge's fingers drummed against the bench, a telltale sign of internal calculation. Then finally he sighed. Mark the fine as pending review. The moment held. A quiet victory, a shift in the atmosphere. But Karoline knew this was only the beginning. Karoline Leavitt had won the battle in the courtroom, but outside, the real war was just beginning. The moment she walked out of the courthouse, the world was already watching. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed like bees to honey, their microphones extended, their questions firing off like rapid gunfire. Miss Leavitt, do you believe this was an attack on religious freedom? Will you be taking further legal action against Judge Prescott? Is this about more than just your cross? Karoline didn't stop. She didn't slow. She had spent years navigating media frenzies, and today was no different. But she knew what was coming. She had exposed something far greater than a single judge's bias. She had uncovered a brewing storm, one that struck at the very heart of constitutional rights in America. Within hours, the headlines exploded. Judge attempts to fine Karoline Leavitt for wearing a cross. It doesn't go as planned. Courtroom controversy, religious expression under attack. Who really controls the courtroom? Karoline Leavitt sparks legal debate. By morning, television screens across the country were flooded with talking heads dissecting the incident. Legal analysts pored over the courtroom footage, debating whether Judge Prescott's ruling had any constitutional basis. Conservative commentators rallied behind Karoline, calling it an alarming attempt to silence religious expression in a place where justice should be blind. Even some left-leaning voices expressed discomfort with the precedent this could set. On social media, it was a wildfire. Twitter threads detailed her courtroom takedown, TikToks replayed her confrontation with Prescott, and Facebook was ablaze with supporters decrying what they called a blatant attack on faith. Thousands of posts, shares, and comments poured in, some celebrating her stand, others debating the implications. Then came the retaliation. A formal complaint was filed against Karoline, accusing her of disrupting courtroom proceedings and challenging judicial authority inappropriately. She wasn't surprised. She had seen these tactics before, turning the accuser into the accused. This wasn't just about courtroom decorum. This was about sending a message that if you dared to stand up, you'd be punished for it. Karoline was in her office when her assistant Lauren rushed in, tablet in hand, her face pale with urgency. "You need to see this," she said, thrusting the screen forward. The Florida Bar Association had issued a statement. It was carefully worded, neutral in tone, but unmistakable in its implications. Judges have the right to maintain decorum in their courtrooms. While attorneys are afforded personal expression, it is important to respect the roles set forth by presiding judges. Karoline read the words slowly, deliberately. Then she exhaled, setting the tablet down. "This isn't just about me anymore," she murmured. Lauren frowned. "They're trying to make an example out of you." Karoline nodded. "They don't realize I'm about to make an example out of them." Karoline picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Karoline, I was just about to call you. This is Lisa Reynolds, a veteran journalist, sharp, relentless, and one of the few reporters who wouldn't back down when the powerful tried to suppress the truth." Karoline got straight to the point. "Lisa, a judge just filed a formal complaint against me for standing up for my religious rights. I need this on record before they try to spin it." Lisa's voice was sharp. "So they're retaliating?" "Exactly, and they're counting on silence." Lisa didn't hesitate. "I'm running this." By the next morning, the headline was everywhere. Judge Prescott under fire for attempting to punish attorney over religious symbol. It wasn't just conservative outlets running the story. Legal scholars across the spectrum weighed in. Some called it a dangerous precedent. Others called it judicial overreach at its finest. A constitutional lawyer from Georgetown went on live television to tear Prescott's logic apart, calling it a blatant disregard for established legal precedent. Another high-profile attorney posted a Twitter thread dissecting how Karoline's actions had exposed a judicial double standard. Then came the statement Karoline had been waiting for. The Judicial Review Board announced an investigation into Judge Prescott's conduct. Karoline was sitting in her office, sipping her morning coffee, when Lauren burst in again, this time her face alight with triumph. "They caved." Karoline set her cup down. "What happened?" Lauren handed her the press release. "They're opening an official inquiry. Prescott is under review." A slow smile spread across Karoline's face. She had forced their hand, and then, as if on cue, another news alert hit. Judge Prescott issues public statement, defends decision, calls controversy unfounded. Karoline clicked on the video. Prescott stood stiffly outside the courthouse, cameras flashing around him. His expression was unreadable, his tone measured. "I have always upheld the integrity of this courtroom. The actions taken were in the interest of maintaining neutrality. However, I respect the judicial review process and will cooperate fully." Karoline almost laughed. Neutrality? That was the best he had? Lauren scoffed. "He's backpedaling." Karoline nodded. "This isn't going away for him." Prescott had expected quiet compliance. He had expected his authority to go unchallenged. Instead, he had ignited a firestorm. And now he had two choices: dig in and risk further humiliation, or back down before the investigation destroyed what was left of his credibility. Karoline didn't need to wait for his answer, because one thing was already clear. This was bigger than a courtroom battle. This was about every American who had ever been told to leave their beliefs at the door. And today they had seen what happened when someone refused. By the time the dust settled, the public had made its verdict clear. Americans weren't going to stand by while personal freedoms were dictated by the whims of a single judge. Karoline had done more than win a legal argument. She had set a precedent. She had sent a message. No one should have to choose between their faith and their profession. The fine against Karoline Leavitt was rescinded. Judge Prescott was found to have violated judicial ethics. The battle was far from over. But as Karoline Leavitt stood before the cameras, microphone in hand, looking into the sea of reporters waiting for her next move, Karoline smiled. This wasn't just a personal victory. This was a precedent, and she turned to the camera crew waiting for her statement. "To anyone watching, never let someone in power strip away your rights without a fight." She paused and then added, "Because sometimes one person standing their ground can change everything. If you believe in standing up for your rights, let your voice be heard. Like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories that matter."